Sure, I know that. We're going to bring up our last feature of the night. Our last feature of the night is a poet from the Boogie Down Bronx. She is also known as the community poet. She has published several books, her latest being Still Laughing. And she'll tell you all about that now. Guys, please give it up for Dara Kalima.
I love seeing the VX drop in the chat. So thank you, Mike, for having me yet again. Yeah, so I'm not even going to say a lot. I'll say some stuff after I say the first thing, but I'm going to read the first poem, which I wrote. Everything that I'm going to perform has been written during the pandemic. Some of it as recent as within the last month. And this one is just going to set the stage. It's sort of an invocation. So I'm going to start that and we're going to work through some feelings, emotions, and stuff. You tell me. My pulse is pulsating to the new cadence, despite the repetition of this sensational scene. I rehearse my lines, hoping for no run-ons, just perfectly practiced literature. May my tongue do only as prescribed. May my linguistic form be the key to my metaphoric freedom. May my words sensually seduce the reluctant listener. May they not be inspired may they not be inspiration for my executioner, but only lead to the surrender and execution of their fear. May this heightened pulse naturally normalize after the moment's retreat. And may its momentary speed have only been that of. And I purposefully end the poem there because at that point, it would either take a Black Lives Matter route or an erotic route, which is where we're going to go tonight. Both pass just a little bit, more one than the other. So, and the many hats and forms of things that I do, I am the vice president of a school that started during the pandemic called Poetics University. And I oftentimes teach a class on poetic forms because I think every poet should know them, whether they never use them or not. So I married a bop and a chemo, and this is the poem that I created from that. And I promise I'm not going to do a lot of talking other than the poems. Are we there yet? I say this without ever checking the news. Yesterday or the yesterday before, or within the last 7 yesterdays, someone who looked like me had their life taken by one play acting as God Almighty, claiming authority over more talent or over more melanated skin. How did we end up in such a sad state? Is this our predestined fate? Will we quell endless hate? It started with colonialization, which led to the slave trade, then Black codes and Jim Crow. There's also redlining and NIMBY, and the fabulously strategic stop and frisk. Oh, and acting in concert gets us all the time too. We've Tefloned and Tupperware those folks in blue. They are justice proof and going nowhere soon, but those with my skin, they are destined to meet fate. How did we end up in such a sad state? Is this our predestined fate? Will we quell endless hate? Authorities adamantly say no to new training and mistakenly swap tasers for pistols while stopping the body cams from recording. They refuse to live in these same hoods, and the courts won't convict their partners in crime, so those of my skin get the death sentence. How did we end up in such a sad state? Is this our predestined fate? Will we quell endless hate? So that's that piece. An abridged account of my encounters with racism. 1. In 5th or 6th grade, the pastor of my school showed up in blackface. 2. Racism was written into my history books that talked more about Miles Standish than Samoset. 3. And within the lessons that focused on John Brown and not Nat Turner. 4. It showed up when our white math/gym teacher thought it appropriate to put his hands on a Black child in front of his classmates, like we would let him get away with that in a majority Black school. 5. His mom used her privilege to yell at us kids for speaking up against his abusive behavior. Oh, in kindergarten, my white presenting teacher punished me for wanting to learn more. How dare I? I met racism in high school when I had to move to the mediocre math table that just happened to be browner because it was assumed I couldn't keep up with my friends. Racism hung out on the vacant brick lots I grew up seeing in the Bronx, rubble of property fires and community divestment. 9. After a botched surgery, my surgeon didn't listen when I complained, nor did the lawyers. It took 2 years of doctor's visits and living in agony to get a diagnosis. They just refused to listen to this Black girl. Yep, racism. 10, I heard about it in Crown Heights. 11, there was also that dude named Rodney King. 12, the news that broke about Abner Louima broke my heart, made me outraged, and taught me fear at the same time. 13, I got passed up for a cab on my birthday, on my graduation day, on a regular day, probably yesterday, and most definitely tomorrow. 14, racism found me at my job when I got paid less than the white man. 15, it also found me when I walked into a different interview and they sighed when I arrived. 16, and that other time when I sat in the waiting room for longer than the actual interview itself. Racism kicked me on the train without an apology. It also sat on my lap and squeezed me out of my seat. Sean Bell was a friend of a friend. Sandra Bland went to high school with a colleague. Racism ignored me when I tried to speak up. It asked me if I will ever just exist as if I had any say in that. And of course, it meant to exist within white standards. 23, racism forgot to invite me on a girls' trip locally and nationally. 24, it stuck its fingers in my hair. 25, at my job. 26, at a fundraiser. 27, at a retreat. 28, racism followed me around stores. It made my church a tourist stop. It made my poverty an ethnic attraction. It stood on my stairs and took photos. It told me my braids were acceptable, but never get dreadlocks. Racism met me and my mom at a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. And before I was born, when my mom was denied good grades because, Black folks aren't allowed that. It also showed up at the fake abortion clinic in the Bronx that cared more about unborn Black fetuses than the actual circumstances of would-be mothers or the resulting children born into suffering. Thankfully, I made it to the right clinic. 36. It was revealed to me when I realized why my great-grandmother could barely read. 37. Racism filled my lungs, limiting its ability. 38. It tastes like quarter waters, potato chips, sour powers, canned veggies, French fries, and pizza. It's the high fructose flavored, overly sugared, way too salty, low quality food that was cheap to eat because fresh food was literally too far out of reach and expensive to eat. Racism was terrible for my body, but yummy for my tongue. 39. It exists in the Hans and the dismissals of what I say, and the talking over me, and the demand that I switch my tongue for their ears' ease. 40. It found me on the first day a stove-heated straightening comb touched my hair, and every time since that I had to tame my mane. Oh, and racism met me at, Actually, this was only to be an abridged list because I could go on and on and on at length, and even as far back to when it met my great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers on ships and in tobacco fields, because I still carry their DNA, which means it met me then too. 42, it'll meet me tomorrow as well. So that's that piece. Thank you. Threads and threats. It's quite peculiar how frequently my mental health finds itself in a flux. The angelic and demonic and narcoleptic whisper and yells its bids on my worth. I traverse life tightrope walking on cooked spaghetti strings, hoping their windy breath doesn't tip me over. My sanity is light as a feather, though the thoughts be weighty. My progress is a train derailing. Sparked embers sometimes grow and rage furiously. Can it be extinguished? Dousing has only ever paused it. The concerns must be saturated in positivity, but I'm certain still something will undo me. The voices are trying. I feel to be unraveling my mind, a skein of yarn, and those feuding pull slowly while untwisting the threads. Is there even a modicum of normalcy out there for me, or will my wants always be eclipsed by their reign over my body? Who are they? Who are they to have a say? How do I get them to say less so I can say more? This conundrum is quite peculiar. So that's that piece. I still have a bunch more for you because I ended up writing a lot of 1-minute poems, and I figured I would mix between the 1 minutes and the other ones. So we're not doing 20 minutes of poems, 20 poems, but there are a few more to go. So this is one of my favorite ones of current. I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything's just fine. I'd say Peachy Keen, but that's so 80s. Either way, doesn't my giant smile convince you? See? Full teeth. I'm perfectly fine. Huh? What? What do you mean I seem off? Depressed? Girl, you know we Black women don't show our stress. We don't talk about being depressed. We pivot and dress our best. See? I look fine, don't I? I mean, I'm weathering storms like fine wine. Wait, where is that damn wine? I need it at this time. Damn it. I'm sorry. It's fine. I'm fine. Recomposed. Sorry. I didn't mean to suggest that I wanted the wine to drink away the pain, but to celebrate surviving the day. Yay. And sweetie, don't try to read my face. Just trust me when I say I'm fine. So there's that piece. We're going to switch. Thank you. We're going to switch the mood a little bit, and it'll make sense in the poem after this one. Private concert. Be my jazz band orchestra. Play me a complex symphony accompanied with lyrical masterpiece. Sing to me some back phrasing melodies that make me arch my spine while hanging on your every word. I need you to make sober me drunkenly swoon with your tunes, taking us out of ourselves, our souls floating with the stars. Be my jazz-filled star tonight. Blow me over with your skillful sax and fastidiously finger every one of my buttons until I along with you. Then pick and pluck and plink each and every one of my strings. Make me make sounds with an amplified bass that I never thought possible. Then tease me with how you run your fingers over my keys. And when ready, give me that big, long, sliding, solid trombone. Make it and me moan, and then move it back and forth ever so skillfully, creating a great euphoric time losing melody. And it's so inspired. Beat a racing rhythm into my drum set. Slap the skin seductively, pleasingly, please me with your musical expertise, bringing us to crescendos that end with us breathing like a breathy clarinet tonight out here in this musical atmosphere. Be my favorite jazz experience, one that makes me savor every single note, measure, tune, harmony, and musical moment. And to remember, I requested that you not only serenade me, but that you do so with a symphony. Therefore, there must be at least 4 movements and motions to this moment we are creating. So play to me and play with me all evening and then nights, not stopping until early morning. Let's get so caught up in these consuming complex melodies until the sun brings us back from the stars, laying us out on this planet's bed, basking in how your tunes took us away. Baby, I beg you to please work all of those musical skills on me. Make me feel it in my entire body. Deplete your jazz in me while bringing me to ecstasy again and again and again and again and and and, and be my masterfully musical, mesmerizing, memorable jazz band orchestra, playing a private, seductively satisfying symphony just for me, baby, please. So there's that piece. So in addition to doing Black Lives Matter stuff, I also do a lot of stuff about bodies and aging and all that other fun stuff. But I am also known as an erotic poet. I use a different pseudonym sometimes or the same name. But I decided, because my cousin is here, because of her, I shifted. So I'm not going to go as bad as I was about to. I'm going to keep it a little more PG. But I have 2 more poems for y'all, and then we'll be done. This one's called An Homage. I write about my body because it seems no one cares about it, or only cares to see it cold, vacant, unable to disrupt the system, no longer taking up space. I mean, more space than the box underground will take, or the space that urn on that mantle will take. I write about my body because it moves autonomously, despite the metaphoric and actual chains put on it, and all of me deserves love and acknowledgement. All of me, from the print on my toes to the circumference of my thighs to the splits at my ends. All of me gets love. Even the rattles that are my knees and the crink that is my back. Someone has to pay homage to the space it takes that others wish it lacked. I write erotica because someone has got to love me, even if who I love up on is imaginary. I write it because Black folks love more than chicken and watermelons or twisting our pain into joy. In fact, we don't love that. But I love the taste of brown skin, the pheromones it exudes, the smooth in its touch, the agelessness in its lines. I write erotica because someone must focus in on the joy shared when we two, us two, who only get each other, finally get to connect regardless of what's going on around, and without barriers or pain, unless pleasurably inflicted. I write erotica because the world needs to know how much I love my Black partner. Even if the world doesn't, my pen will spin an homage to the eros in their skin. I write about my hood because it isn't just burnt lots and bricks or a stop on a poverty tour. A whole music genre was birthed here, as was a Supreme Court justice. We in this hood are not just charity cases. In fact, we just wish you get off our case, issuing cases because we were too dark for your view. We are just a people doing the best we can do while honoring the flavoring of our ancestry. We may rub together hopes and dreams to redeem the legacies that the red lines wiped away, but we still survive. In fact, we thrive. We take no dives. This place is no dive. We exist and persist on drive. So I pen poems for my neighbors, mi gente, mi familia, my family, because someone has got to praise and write odes to all we do. Despite all that we go through, I will write homages to my home, homages to my hood. And I write about Black pain, not because I want to. If I could retire this topic, I would, but the system ain't retiring its practices. From slavery to Black codes to Jim Crow to the war on drugs, stop and frisk, the practice just gets slimier and it just persists in the names of victims piles, as does my trauma. So I pen as a form of protest, as a form of release, as a form of therapy, as an SOS that maybe someone, anyone, everyone will give it a rest before the next arrest where Black bodies go into cardiac arrest. So I keep writing these poems of Black pain, like I do about my victimhood, that made me chant Me Too. It happened to me too. It has happened to her too. It has happened to him too. And it will happen to them too. I pen about this too because there must be a face to the crimes that happen behind closed doors where no's are uttered and ignored. Like folks who say don't shoot are ignored, like or ask for autonomy are ignored, like ask for autonomy and justice are ignored, like the poem you just heard yesterday or maybe even a few minutes ago that was ignored. I write these in hope to no longer be ignored, but honestly, I wouldn't mind being white so I too can ignore and be exempt from this plight, but I can't. The projectile is always headed towards me, the target, victimhood, my destiny. I write this, though I don't want to. I write like I'm running out of time because I am. My time is limited, but I'd much prefer to pen about my body, being wrapped up with my lover in our hood. I wish that I could. I wish I could stop making tombstone poems in memoriam of the slain, but they won't stop with the staining of streets. They won't stop stealing our life force. So I am forced to pay homage with this pen. So I have one more, but I'm going to save my stuff before I say that because I will not have energy by the time I finish that poem. So my name is Dara Kalima. You can follow me with the hashtag The Community Poet. Don't just do Community Poet because you won't find me. It's The Community Poet because I am the community poet. I most recently released my book, Still Laughing. It is available in Kindle, hardcover, and paperback online on Amazon. You can get the paperback from me on my website, and I'll drop that in there later. You can find me on Instagram, Callie's Camera, everything I'll drop in the chat. Don't worry about it. But I thank you, Mike, for giving me this opportunity. I thank you all who have come. I have 3 former coworkers, a close friend, a poet person, and family on the screen right now. So I'm really hyped and happy that you guys all came and shared with me and are present. So respite. My fatigued, urban acclimated feet hurriedly stumble through the life restoring forest, rushing to where I could go for rest. I desperately needed a respite. And it was there. It was here among the trees that dwarfed me that I paused, though winded. I stared into the atmosphere, hoping to escape that which I most fear, the Olympic-sized weight of my race, which is why I raced there to erase the impact of my differences, just for a moment. I need this moment. And don't ask me to return, and don't placate me with your summer flavored ice cream. Can't you see my eyes scream and stream the hurt that my words can't expel? Is this a curse? Are all that are born with black skin trapped in a sin-fueled spell, and we are the chosen victims? This must be a curse. Can you just let me sit here and spell, and don't tell me to sniff the light-filled roses, admire the deceitful tulips, when your tulips refuse to acknowledge my existence. Living as I do is trying to peacefully exist is just too fucking tense. And that is why Deputy Clyde Kerr III took his life. Tightrope walking on the razor's edge between his black hue and his duty in blue. He grabbed his lifelines from the hands of fate to seal his own. It was his form of empowerment when realizing that his law enforcement power meant he had none. He, like me, was trapped and tired. He was tired of being trapped porn. So he took control, videoed his swan song, and then, like that, was gone. He is gone. But he couldn't see that he was going to be the solution, that he was our greatest greatness. His presence was beneficial, but now we are singing benedictions, y'all. And I can't make this make any kind of sense. This world is so outstanding. But we Black folks get left standing out on the picket lines alone, often on the outs with the rest of society, treated like we are cursed. I don't want to be. I just want to be. And after much thought and consideration, and honestly some contemplation, I now know I don't want to escape like he or take a Corinne Gaines last stand, but damn, this truly is no easy plight. And my body is weary from this fight, so I will still sometimes flee internally, other times externally to the woods, where my difference matters not, where I can dream up what the what could be. It is here that I grab my pen while I deep breathe the forest scene and narrate new realities. Thank you, everyone.
Guys, give it up for Dara Kalima.